Yes, Nompu, I think you have just nailed that exact reason, being the significant amount of load shedding in the month of September. And if you look at Eskom's data, we're talking about 80% of all hours in the month of September were impacted by load shedding. So no wonder that we have seen, a further drop in economic transactions as measured by the BETI, because I think it was just impossible, for companies to produce at full capacity. Productivity went down. I mean, we all know, how frustrating it was if you want to work and there's no internet or there's no cell phone signal. And we've had that scenario of low productivity throughout the month of September. So that explains, why we've seen a further drop. I think, all the other headwinds that we have been battling with in the South African economy, being the higher cost of living, high inflation and high interest rates, all of those have been adding over the past couple of months in combination with load shedding to result in less economic activity. And that is what the BETI is indicating to us.
Yeah. So, Elize, we're in a high cost of living environment and a high input cost environment for business as well. How much do you think the latter is having an impact on jobs and the retention thereof?
I think there's going to be increasing pressure on businesses as a result of all these factors, the high input costs, the difficulty to produce, and so on. So it will result in businesses under pressure in terms of profits, margins, dropping. So I do think the scenario is going to play out, into a more dire employment scenario going forward, especially, as we are seeing at the moment, industrial action is, workers demand higher wages given the higher cost of living. But the higher the wage, the even more difficult it will be for companies, state-owned enterprises or private companies, to make profit and to keep the employment force, stable. So I think we might start to see, this trend developing where we get higher wage increases, but some job, opportunities in the process being cut, to be able to make the books work for companies.
Yeah. Speaking about the industrial action at Transnet, we understand that it's got so serious in terms of negotiations that ministers are also participating in the negotiations, and the workers are not budging. They're quite aware of what's at stake when they go on strike, given the significance of Transnet, in terms of its services for the whole economy. So they're not willing to give up unless they get that inflation increase. Now, if we assume that government does agree to it, because obviously government would have to backstop Transnet in this, if we assume that happens, we know that the public sector workers are looking to strike any day now because they also want what they view as a reasonable increase. What does this mean for the midterm budget and the fiscal space of the South African government?
Yes, Nampo, you have now touched on a very important aspect that we are looking at currently. I mean, we are moving into just a couple of weeks before we see the medium-term budget policy statement. Number one, I think it's not been budgeted for to have as high increases as the unions are now asking for. And as we know, there's a revenue overrun. There will be pressure on government to just hand this extra money out, in the form of higher wages. But we also know that we've got a fiscal scenario that's unsustainable, and we actually need to look at our debt levels. I mean, we've got Eskom as a major hampering factor for the whole economy, and it would make a lot more sense to focus on Eskom's problems to try and, avert a further, scenario or further deterioration of what's happening already on the Eskom side. So we are going to see a scenario where fiscal is even under more pressure. If we do see that salaries are taking up a bigger chunk of this. We need to get more money to the productive side of the economy, i.e. infrastructure spend, infrastructure upgrading, that we can lift the potential growth of the economy. If we're going to continue to just, pay higher salaries and not getting really more output for the higher cost, then the whole economy, in terms of productivity, will decline further.
Yeah, I think the difficulty as well, Elize, is that, of course, that revenue overrun that the government managed to benefit from, or that the taxman benefited from, was from the mining sector in large part. But now with this Transnet strike, it means we're already being told by the likes of Kumba Iron Ore that they're going to lose, billions because they're not going to be able to export. It means that cushion that the government has enjoyed is not going to be there because all the other other mining houses are likely also going to be affected in a similar way.
Absolutely. And then also you probably heard that the IMF has overnight dropped the economic growth forecast for the global economy even further, and stating that about 30% of all countries in the world will have a technical recession somewhere in the next year or two. So what that means to us in terms of commodity exporters, it will mean less demand for our exports on the one side, and most probably also further downward pressure on our commodity prices. So you're quite right that that windfall that we've now going to probably see for the second year in a row will most probably not be repeated again. So it is a temporary short-term alleviation in terms of the income side. But it would be not wise, in my opinion, to take all of that money and just, keep the unions happy. Unfortunately, we are all suffering under the higher cost of living. And in an ideal world, we would have liked to just say, yes, we understand your problem. Here's the increase you want. But South Africa's economy has been under pressure already for a couple of years now. And we will just this will put us even more on the back foot.
Elize Kruger, thank you very much for your time. She's an independent economist.